Hello and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja, and these are the headlines. Iran's Atomic Energy Organization says the underground Natanz nuclear facility has been hit by a terrorist attack. The findings comes hours after the facility suffered a power outage following the inauguration of new centrifuges by President Rouhani on Saturday. Israel was suspected of carrying out an explosion at the site in July last year. Yemeni officials say fighting for the strategic city of Marib has killed 70 pro-government and Houthi rebels over the past 24 hours. The Houthis have been trying to seize oil-rich Marib since February. Indian forces have martyred 5 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The youths were targeted during military raids in Shopian and Islamabad districts. The occupying forces have martyred over 300 Kashmiris since the revocation of the territory status on the 5th of August 2019. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says there will be consequences if Russia acts aggressively in the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine. Russia has warned of military intervention to protect its citizens in the region, where fighting has escalated between the rebels and the government forces. India has yet again reported record single-day COVID-19 cases of nearly 153,000 and 5-month high deaths of over 800. In Pakistan, 114 people died while over 5,000 contracted the disease overnight. The country's death toll has surged to 15,443, while its caseload has topped 721,000. Globally, the virus has claimed over 2.9 million lives and infected more than 135 million. For more news in detail, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Iran's Atomic Energy Organization says the underground Natanz nuclear facility has been hit by a terrorist attack. The findings come hours after the facility suffered a power outage following the inauguration of new centrifuges by President Rouhani on Saturday. The head of Iran's nuclear program, Ali Akbar Salahi, said Iran reserves the right to take action against the perpetrators of the attack. He added that the attack reflects the failure of those who oppose Vienna talks aimed at reviving the 2015 nuclear deal. He urged the international community and the UN atomic watchdog to respond to the incident. Israel was suspected of carrying out an explosion at the same site last year. Israel's Defense Minister Benny Gantz has pledged to cooperate with the United States on Iran. He was speaking alongside Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin, who is on his first ever visit to Israel. Gantz voiced hope that Israel's security would be safeguarded under any renewed nuclear deal with Tehran. August said that the alliance with Tel Aviv is central to regional security, and the U.S. will ensure Israel's military edge in the Middle East.
During our meeting, I reaffirmed to Minister Gantz our commitment to Israel is enduring and it is ironclad.
South Korean Prime Minister Chung Si-kyun has arrived in Iran for bilateral talks. The visit comes amid lingering tensions over Tehran's call to unlock its funds frozen by Seoul under the U.S. sanctions. During the 3-day visit, Chung is scheduled to meet with Iran's first Vice President Ishaq Jahangiri. He will also hold talks with other political leadership of Iran. This is the first visit by a South Korean premier in 44 years and comes 2 days after Iran released a seized Korean oil tanker. Yemeni officials say fighting for the strategic city of Marib has killed 70 pro-government and Houthi rebels over the past 24 hours. The Houthis have been trying to seize oil-rich Marib since February. Pro-government officials have said that battles are raging on 3 fronts outside Marib amid a concerted push by the Houthis. The new toll comes a day after officials confirmed the killing of 53 fighters on both sides. Meanwhile, the Arab coalition says it has destroyed Houthi drones launched towards Saudi Arabia. The kingdom state media reported the drones were aimed at the southern cities of Khamis Mushayth and Jazan. Indian forces have martyred 5 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The number of martyred youths in the territory has risen to 12 in the past 72 hours. The youths were targeted during a military raid in Shopian and Islamabad districts. Earlier, Indian troops martyred 7 Kashmiris in separate cordon and search operations in Shopian and Pulwama districts. The authorities have snapped internet services in Shopian, Kulgam, and Islamabad districts. Kashmiri leaders of the All Parties Hurriyat Conference have slammed the latest surge in the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. The occupying forces have martyred over 300 Kashmiris since the revocation of the territory status on the 5th of August 2019. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has arrived in Germany along with a delegation on a 3-day official trip. Speaking at the Berlin airport, Qureshi said he will meet the business leaders and Pakistani diaspora in Germany. The foreign minister said he will hold a meeting with his German counterpart to discuss the regional situation. Qureshi added that he will also call on the president of the Bundestag, Wolfgang Schäuble. Earlier, the Foreign Office said Qureshi's visit to Germany is part of a regular high-level exchange between the two countries. In Myanmar, pro-democracy activists have taken to the streets across the country a day after security forces shot dead 82 more civilians. The protesters displayed 3-finger salutes to condemn the military regime and wore black to mourn those killed. The demonstrators also carried Eugenia as a symbol of triumph and defiance in the Kan Mayataz town. Calling the recent violence a genocide, protest organizers said that the military is shooting even at shadows it suspects. More than 700 people have been killed by the military since the first February coup. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says there will be consequences if Russia acts aggressively in the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine. According to the White House, Russia has amassed more troops on Ukraine's eastern border than it did in 2014. Kiev has raised alarm over a buildup of Russian forces near the border amid rise in violence between Ukrainian troops and pro-Russia separatists in Donbass. Moscow denies its troops are a threat, but warned of intervention to protect its citizens in the region. Meanwhile, Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan said Ankara is working for a peaceful resolution of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. In Kyrgyzstan, voters have supported a referendum giving greater powers to incumbent President Sardar Japov. Nearly 80% of voters backed the reform, although a turnout was just above the 30% threshold required to make the referendum valid. The constitutional reform will bring the political system of the Central Asian nation closer to that of its neighbors, such as Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Japov and his supporters hope a strengthened presidency will make the country more stable. Egypt and Sudan have rejected an Ethiopian proposal to share data on the operations of its dam on the Blue Nile. This comes after the latest round of talks between the 3 countries in Kinshasa ended without progress. Sudan's irrigation ministry said Ethiopia's offer implies suspicious selectivity in dealing with what has been agreed upon. Meanwhile, in an interview, Egypt's irrigation minister said that his chief concern is drought management. Addis Ababa has again invited the 2 sides to nominate dam operators for data exchange before the dam's filling. But Cairo and Khartoum say they are seeking a legally binding agreement over the dam's operations. In Chad, voting is underway in a presidential election in which Idriss Déby is widely expected to extend his 3-decade rule. Déby was first to cast his ballot at a polling station in the capital, N'Djamena. He took office in 1990 and in 2018 pushed through a new constitution that could let him stay in power until 2033. Among his 6 rivals is former Prime Minister Albert Pahimi Padake. Several leading opponents are boycotting the race, including the 2016 runner-up Salah Kebuza. Kebuza has vowed to make Chad ungovernable if Déby wins. Voting has started in Benin in a presidential election in which the incumbent Patrice Talon is heavily favored to win. Some opposition parties called for a boycott following a week of deadly protest against Talon. On Thursday, an unknown number of people were killed in the central town of Bante when security forces fired warning shots. Opponents accused Talon of undermining Benin's standing as one of West Africa's most stable democracies. Talon faces two relatively little-known opposition candidates. Alassane Soumanu was a minister under the former president, and Corentin Kahu is a veteran politician. Funeral preparations for Britain's Prince Philip, who died on Friday, are underway in Windsor Castle. The ceremonial royal funeral will be held at St. George's Chapel on the 17th of April. Buckingham Palace said the number of mourners will be limited to 30 at the funeral. Prime Minister Boris Johnson will not attend the funeral to make space for as many family members as possible. In a statement, Downing Street said Johnson wants to act in accordance with what is best for the royal household. The palace has confirmed that Prince Harry will be attending the funeral without his wife. Meghan Markle, who is pregnant, will not make the trip from the United States on medical advice. India has yet again reported record single-day COVID-19 cases of nearly 153,000 and five-month high deaths of over 800. Brazil and Mexico have reported more than 2,000 deaths each from COVID-19 overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 2.9 million lives and infected over 135 million. More on the pandemic in this report.
As the vaccine drives get stumbled due to one reason or another, the number of fatalities continues to aggressively grow. The University of Washington Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluations model has predicted around 618,000 people will have died from coronavirus in the U.S. by August 1st, meaning 100,000 more deaths in the country in less than 4 months. The situation is equally grim in the South. Peru registered a record number of nearly 400 deaths overnight as health workers battle a shortage of medical oxygen and saturated hospitals. The Archbishop of Chile's capital, Santiago, has been hospitalized after testing positive for the coronavirus. Celestino Eos had received both doses of the Sinovac vaccine. Colombia's capital, Bogota, has implemented new restrictions, including a 3-day lockdown in a bid to curb the third wave. Experts warn, given the behavior of citizens, they can potentially have 3 waves of the virus every year for an indefinite period of time.
Compared with other countries in the region, we are quite behind in terms of vaccinations. We have a good network of services, one of the best in Latin America in terms of the ability to serve people. But we have undisciplined people who do not abide by the measures, so we expect the waves of contagion will follow, and we will have 2 or 3 waves per year from here, indefinitely.
Leading scientists have warned that the UK government is risking the third wave by easing the lockdown, at a time when official data still shows virus hotspots across many parts of the country. Meanwhile, France will lengthen the period between the first and second shots of messenger RNA vaccines to 6 weeks from 4 weeks to accelerate the inoculation campaign. Pressure remains acute in hospitals, transfers a precious tool for saving lives. But with hospital visits allowed, families do not want patients to be transferred to other cities.
There's a big difference between the first and second wave and now, which is that now families are authorized to visit their loved ones in hospital. I can go see him, so there's a link. So it's much more difficult to convince families to transfer patients. But still we need these transfers.
A real-world data studied in Israel has found the variant discovered in South Africa can break through Pfizer vaccine to some extent.
Pakistan has recorded 114 deaths from COVID-19 overnight, its highest single-day toll during the third wave. The health ministry says over 5,000 tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. The ministry said the death toll has jumped to 15,443. It said out of over 721,000 cases so far, more than 631,000 have recovered. The number of active cases is now approaching 74,000, with over 4,000 in critical condition. The country's positivity ratio stands at 10.96%. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The International Monetary Fund says Lebanon needs a new government to pull itself out of the economic crisis. In a report, a senior IMF official, Jihad Azur, called for an end to the wrangling over the new cabinet. Lebanon's economic woes have multiplied following the Beirut blast last year. A standoff over the formation of a new government has delayed revival of the funding talks with the IMF. In Germany, the leader of the Christian Democratic Union has called for a quick decision on the candidacy for chancellor. Armin Laschet has come for a September national election that will determine the successor to Angela Merkel. She took office in 2005 and is set to step down following the federal election. In a news conference, Laschet said that he and Markus Söder, the leader of the Christian Social Union, are ready to run for chancellor. Both the CDU and the CSU are expected to name their candidates soon. In Ecuador, voters are set to cast their ballot in the presidential runoff today. This comes amid longing debate whether the country's economic issues can be best treated through socialism or market-friendly policies. The nationwide ballot distribution took place under the careful watch of the military. The pre-runoff polls indicate socialist Andrés Arauz with a lead over his rival and free market advocate Guillermo Lasso. Arauz won the first-round election in February with 32.7% of the vote. A victory for him will now further consolidate a string of leftist electoral victories in South America. In Peru, ballots are being distributed in polling stations as the country prepares to vote for a new president. But the COVID-19 pandemic has diminished the usual buzz surrounding the elections. This report has more.
Peru battles the peak of COVID-19 cases with hospitals overwhelmed. Moreover, the voting comes in the wake of last year's constitutional crisis and political scandals. Ballots were distributed amid tight security by the National Police Force.
The National Police is providing the security escort of the trucks that are going to distribute the electoral material. Each truck is escorted with a patrol car with its respected crew. In order to accompany them, provide security during transportation and security during distribution of this electoral material in each of the polling stations.
As candidates close their campaigns, pollsters say half a dozen of them are still in the running for the top 2 spots. The government has mobilized massive machinery to ensure the elections are held smoothly.
200 trucks are leaving these premises, accompanied by 200 patrol cars. We are sending 20 trucks to Cajao, 180 trucks to Lima's metropolitan area to transport the material during the next 12 hours, constantly to 3,000 polling stations. In total, we are mobilizing 450 tons of material.
In the final pre-election polls, Keiko Fujimori, the daughter of ex-president Alberto Fujimori, has climbed to the top. But pollsters say voters were disenchanted with all candidates, giving rise to more radical positions.
China says it is willing to work with Brazil to promote its comprehensive strategic partnership. Foreign Minister Wang Yi renewed the pledge in a phone call with his Brazilian counterpart, Carlos Alberto Franco Franca. Chinese state media said Wang termed the two sides important forces in driving forward the global multiple polarization. Wang said the two sides should actively expand cooperation in 5G, digital economy, artificial intelligence, and other fields. He added Beijing believes Brasilia will provide a fair and open business environment for Chinese firms operating in Brazil. Franca said Brazil aims to further strengthen the ties and carry out long-term cooperation with China. In China, 21 miners have been trapped in a coal mine that flooded the northwestern China's Xinjiang region. State media says so far 8 of them have been rescued uninjured. It said all the trapped miners have been located and a rescue operation is underway. The flooding occurred when the Fangyuan mine was undergoing a technological upgrade. Local authorities said that the accident has cut off power and communication systems, which has complicated the rescue operation. In Indonesia, the death toll from the earthquake on the main island of Java has risen to 8. Officials said more than 1,300 buildings have been damaged in the 6.0 magnitude quake. 5 died in Malung district and 3 bodies were retrieved from Lumajang district. The disaster management officials have warned people to stay away from slopes of soil or rocks to avoid landslides. This was the second deadly disaster to hit Indonesia this week. Last Sunday, tropical cyclone Siroha killed at least 174 people and left 48 still missing in East Nusa Tenggara province. Tropical cyclone Siroha has strengthened off the western Australian coast. The Emergency Services Department has broadened the warning to immediately take shelter to several towns. 5 coastal towns are putting themselves on red alert given high winds and the prospect of coastal flooding. The department has also evacuated residents of Denham and Shark Bay, 500 kilometers north of Perth. It said there is a possible threat to lives and homes as the cyclone approaches land. The Bureau of Meteorology said that 3-category cyclone is repeatedly moving southeast but is likely to weaken to Category 2 prior to making landfall. It said wind gusts of 150 kilometers an hour are expected. In the U.S. state of California, 4 dead gray whales have washed ashore on San Francisco Bay Area beaches in 9 days. Marine Mammal Center in California said 2 of them died from blunt force trauma from ship strikes. Meanwhile, an investigation is ongoing on the other 2 giant aquatic mammals. The center says common causes of gray whale deaths include starvation, climate change, and becoming entangled in fish nets. The population of around 27,000 gray whales is protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act in the United States. In India's southeastern Odisha state, forest officials in a rural area rescued an elephant calf from the bottom of a well. The calf had fallen in as a herd passed through the area during the night. The officials used an excavator to dig out the elephant from the well. The local fire department also lent a hand to pull the calf up out of the hole using ropes. India has over 50% of the world's Asiatic elephant population, but their number has decreased in recent years due to the shrinking habitats. Egypt has unveiled a recently discovered city in Luxor. The discovery of the lost city has given an interesting insight into the daily lives of the people of the Golden Age. Details in this report.
An ancient Egyptian city buried under sand for 3 millennia has been unearthed by archaeologists. Renowned Egyptologist Zahi Hawass and his team began searching for a mortuary temple near Luxor in September, but ended up finding the mud brick formations of the lost city, having been only partly excavated. It is presumably the largest ancient city to be ever uncovered in Egypt. Archaeologists are optimistic that further important finds would be revealed from the discovery.
We believe that this golden lost city is the most important discovery after the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun. I call it golden because it was found in the golden age of Egypt, 1391 BC. I called it lost city because it was lost. No one really believed that the city could exist here.
The well-preserved city has almost complete walls and rooms filled with daily life tools along with rings, scarabs, and colored pottery vessels. Archaeologists say the discovery sheds light on the beginning of the worship of the ancient god Aten.
The discovery of this city has given us insight into the daily lives of ancient Egyptians. We've always believed that ancient Egyptian culture was one of death and resurrection. But now we know these details about the lives of the ancient Egyptian. We found containers that were for aged meat. We found items that have given us the history of this area belonging to Amenhotep III. And this is where the worship of Aten began, before the worship of Akhenaten. And this changes history. This discovery is important for Egyptian history because it adds volumes to Egypt's history.
According to historical references, the site once housed 3 of Amenhotep III's palaces and the empire's administrative and industrial center. The 9th Pharaoh's empire from 1386 to 1349 BC stretched from the Euphrates River in modern Iraq and Syria to Sudan.
A 3rd lava stream has opened in a volcano in Reykjanes Peninsula of Iceland after 3 weeks of continuous eruption. Iceland hosts some of the world's most volcanically active hotspots, but this one is unusual in its proximity to the main population center. It is located some 30 kilometers southwest of the country's capital, Reykjavik. Volcanologists have no idea how long the eruption will continue, saying it could stop soon or continue for possibly decades. Welcome back. Bitcoin has soared above the $60,000 mark again to approach record highs. The world's biggest cryptocurrency hit its highest in nearly a month, reaching $61,222. The rise comes amid talks of a constrained new supplies against the evidence of wider adoption. Bitcoin first crossed the $60,000 mark on the 13th of March, hitting a record $61,781. Its stunning gains have been driven by mainstream acceptance as investment and a means of payment. Earlier, Tesla Incorporation invested around $1 billion in Bitcoin and started accepting it as a payment for its cars. Most stock markets in the Gulf have slipped after oil prices dipped 2% at the end of last week. Renewed COVID-19 lockdowns in some countries offset optimism about a recovery in fuel demand. The movement in oil prices is a key catalyst for the Gulf region's financial markets. Qatar's index dropped over 0.5%, while Saudi Arabia's benchmark index slipped marginally. In Abu Dhabi, the index fell fractionally, but Dubai's main shares index rose by 0.5%, led by gains in blue-chip developer Emaar Properties and Damac Properties. In golf, Japan's Heike Matsuyama has stormed home in a style to secure a 4-shot lead after the third round at Augusta National. Matsuyama is poised to become the first Asian golfer to win the Masters. Matsuyama played 8 holes and went to sizzling 6 under over the stretch for a 7 under par 65 to end at 11 under. Overnight leader Justin Rose finished in second place with 3 others at 7 under. He is now tied with Xander Schauffele, Australian Mark Leishman, and Masters debutant Will Zalatoris. Former champion Jordan Spieth finished 6 shots back at 5 under after 2 bogeys and a double bogey. In National Basketball Association, Devin Booker's 27 points have helped the Phoenix Suns rally to a 134-106 point victory over Washington Wizards. Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton finished with double-doubles for the Suns. Paul scored 13 points and dished 10 assists, while Ayton recorded 14 points with 10 rebounds. In another match, Los Angeles Lakers clobbered Brooklyn Nets 126-101. Dennis Schroeder scored 19 points for the shorthanded Lakers, followed by Andre Drummond's double-double. Meanwhile, Toronto Raptors dominated Cleveland Cavaliers 135-115. Gary Trent Jr. scored a career-high 44 points as the Raptors halted Cavaliers' second game-winning streak. It's now time to take a look at the weather around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.